Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the fifth stop on our cross-Canada exploration in partnership with Edwin. So if you've been with us the last few weeks, you know we've been bouncing all around the country and meeting incredible scientists, researchers, and explorers who are looking at our amazing wild places, our amazing wild species, and then the impact that we are having on them. And as we know, humans are having a huge impact on our ecosystems in a variety of ways, ranging from climate change to deforestation to pollution in our oceans. So this will be 6 incredible journeys across the country and our 7th bonus trip. I want to remind everybody on the 19th, we will head out live into the field to a secret location, and we will have a fun wrap-up 7th event. So my name is Joe Grabowski, if you don't know that already, and I will be your host for this series. I run an organization called Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So we bring exploration, conservation, adventure, and science live into classrooms across North America through virtual speakers and field trips. If you haven't already, take some time to visit exploringbytheseat.com. You can find 30-40 live events for classrooms each month, connecting with scientists, adventurers, explorers, conservationists all over the world. So before I get to today's speaker, I want to give another huge shout out to Edwin. As you know, they've pulled together an incredible curriculum material for you to utilize throughout the cross-Canada exploration with your students. They're putting out amazing reminders before the events, the day before the events, an hour before the events. And you can find all the links you need there to tune in and to access these materials. And I'll share those closer to the end of the call as well. So we are heading out now to the East Coast, heading out to the Maritimes, and we're going to spend some time with Cody Carlyle. He's conducted research in all of Canada's 3 oceans, including 5 visits to the Arctic for fieldwork. Currently, he's a PhD student at the University of New Brunswick. He's studying how we can use high-resolution satellite images to find and count whales from space. And he's hoping this work can help improve our knowledge of whale populations to better avoid human impacts on species, especially the endangered northern Atlantic right whales. So I'm going to bring Cody in live with me right now. Hey, Cody, how are you doing today?
Hey, how's it going, Joe? Excited to be here.
Good. Well, it's great to have you with us today. We'll have a great group of classrooms. I should do a shout out to the classrooms who will be tuning in on YouTube throughout the week. I'll make sure I post your Kahoot link after this event. But to the classrooms who are with us, we want you to say hi in the chat. Send us in some questions when the time comes. And of course, be ready to play some Kahoot with us. Cody, the floor is yours. Let's dive into your work out on the East Coast.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. As you kind of mentioned, I'm working a lot on kind of how we find these whales. And so that's what I'm going to mainly talk about today is kind of basically how we find marine mammals. But then also near the end too, I'm going to talk a little bit about why we want to find them and do these things. And that'll tie into these human impacts we're talking about. And yeah, I'm going to include a few snippets of kind of some of my other work throughout, as you said, all 3 oceans. But yeah, I'm going to try and focus a lot on this guy right here in this first image, the North Atlantic right whale, which is on our Atlantic coast where I am. So as you said, you kind of introduced me. I'm a PhD student at the University of New Brunswick. So I'm right out here, right kind of in the middle of that Atlantic coast there. A great area to kind of study and understand that area. But before that, I actually grew up on the west coast of Canada in British Columbia. And I found myself really lucky to get to be around some amazing marine life, beautiful oceans. And that really gave me this interest in it and wanting to understand it more and better. So when I went to school, I started really focusing on all this these marine ecosystems and everything. And it actually kind of slowly turned out I started to end up focusing on marine mammals. You can see some marine mammals in my photographs here. But just really quickly as a reminder for everybody, marine mammals, they're not fish. They are mammals, just like you and me. So we all breathe air. They breathe air as well. They're warm-blooded. They give off heat. But marine mammals also kind of have this special fat blubber in them that keeps them warmer. And they also, but the main thing about marine mammals is they really depend on the ocean for at least part of, if not all of their entire life. You can see some examples of marine mammals here. But so because they live in the ocean for most or all of their life, how do we find them if we want to study them and understand them? So traditionally, we've used a few different methods. We go out in boats and try and find them right out in the water in boats. Sometimes we try and find them from land. If they kind of go near to shore or there's a little choke point, we'll try and find them from the land. Or we'll actually go out in planes and fly over the ocean and try and find them as we fly over them, and we can kind of try and cover a lot of ocean really quickly. And so I was lucky in my studies, or as I've gone through my studies, I've been able to participate in quite a few of these plane-based or aerial surveys, we call them. So as I said, we kind of fly over top of the animals. So usually about 300 meters, and we cover lots of ground looking for whales. This is or other marine mammals. This is a photo for when I was in the Arctic for doing marine mammal surveys. And so also the cool thing about this now is we're getting a little bit fancier. We've realized our eyes aren't really perfect. We can make a lot of mistakes. So we're starting to put fancy technology inside of the planes to help us take photographs and things as well too, that can actually perform better than our eyes sometimes. And so I'll show you some really good examples too. We can get these really nice aerial overhead photographs of animals. So you can see here, these are narwhal from when I was in the Arctic. And even in this area here, we found, if you zoom in, some little narwhal young. We found almost a baby here. So we can even see kind of ages of animals. We also look for seals. So seals love to go out on top of ice or land. And then we can take photographs of them and find out, how many there are when we fly over them as well. Here, you can see some seals out on ice. And we've even gotten fancier with the technology because, as I mentioned earlier, with marine mammals, just like us, they give off heat. So we've actually put thermal cameras in the plane where these animals giving off a lot of heat, and then the environment around them is a lot colder. So they show up as hot spots in the environment. So we can use these thermal cameras to try and find these hot spots. And then when we kind of overlap it with our photographs, we can see like, oh yeah, these are seals. So it actually makes it even easier for us to find animals as well too, or marine mammals. We've done this with walrus as well too. Just another example. And you zoom in. I love walrus. They're so cool. They just all get all together and climb on top of each other. They're really loud and noisy and dirty. But so also recently, I've shifted to taking part in some of these other ways we try and find marine mammals. So example here, I did also some boat surveys. So this is as I shifted to now the Atlantic coast. And so we were looking for, I'm going to talk about them a lot in a bit, North Atlantic right whales. And so this, we get much more of a down on the water view, but we still do similar things. We look for where the whales are, how many. But so as I've done these aerial surveys and these boat surveys, I've noticed one common thread between all of these, and that's that marine mammals are very hard to find. All those beautiful photos I was showing you, those are kind of more often not the exception than the rule. A lot of the time, as you can see in these photos, we're looking at a lot of empty ocean with nothing in it. Another example here from the boat surveys. So these marine mammals, it's a huge ocean. They move around a lot. They're very mobile, very quick, and they can dive underneath the water for a long time. So it can be really hard to find them. And so I started to think about this a lot and realized, these methods, these boats, these planes, they're very good. And we've been able to find out a lot with them, but it's not complete. We could definitely use more ways to study them and find them. And yeah, to just help make this bigger toolbox to try and find them. And so this is where it's taken me to what I'm doing today at the University of New Brunswick. I'm working with a large group where we're trying to make satellites work for finding whales. So this is quite a bit different than the aerial surveys I showed you. Instead of being only 300 meters above, these satellites are 620 kilometers away from the surface of the Earth, and they're taking pictures down on the Earth. Now, so that makes it so the photos maybe might not be as, nice because it's taking them from so far, and you'll see that in a minute. But the cool thing is they're always circling the planet. So we can really find whales pretty much all over the world. We can, we don't have to rely on a plane to take us there. So we can find, so we can look all over the world. And so some examples here, we've been able to find southern right whales in Argentina down here. We've been able to find gray whales in Mexico. And so you can see again, these are very faint and not as easy to see, but we can still figure out, and we can use certain features to tell they're whales. We've done fin whales in the Mediterranean here. You can even see a little faint line of a tail there. But so basically, I don't even have to leave my chair now, and we can start to find whales all over the world. But so my group at the University of New Brunswick were very interested in one species and trying to make this work for a certain species. And that's the North Atlantic right whale. So these North Atlantic right whales, they live on the east coast of Canada, around where I am, in New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, even coastal Quebec, but also down the coast of the Atlantic USA as well. And so they've got this really unique thing on them called callosities. So you can see here the white on the top of this whale's head, and then zoomed in a little bit better here. These are these white kind of rough patches on the skin of right whales. It's actually made of keratin, which is the same thing that our hair and our nails are made of. But so only right whales have these callosities on them. So if we see these, we know we're looking at a right whale and not somebody else. So when we take satellite images from areas where right whales could be, even though these images are blurry, the right whales are very dark and hard to tell, we can actually see these whitened rough patches, these callosities on these whales showing up. And so when we see these, we know that this has to be a right whale. So this is kind of helping us use satellites to find whales in way greater areas than we can by just using boats and planes and things like that. So this has been a great kind of step. But we're not stopping there. We're working on a bunch of other tools as well that I'm just going to highlight a little bit. We're working on drones as well. And drones are kind of the opposite of the satellites that I'm working on. They are taking photos from the sky of whales, but way, way closer to the ocean. So they can't really cover as much area as a satellite. So that might be something that doesn't work as well. But what they do really well is they take, as you can see here, really beautiful detailed photos. You can see almost every little scratch and nick on the skin. And so this is a different advantage from the satellites, because so as these callosities that I've mentioned that are unique to right whales, the other really cool thing about them is each individual has a different pattern as well. So they're actually unique to each individual right whale. So we can tell who we're looking at from these really beautiful drone images. And so, yeah, when we find a bunch of whales in an area, then we can go try and find out exactly who we're looking at and who hangs out where and when. So with kind of these tools I've been showing you, we have this really awesome kind of multi-level approach with all these different tools, and they each give us different pieces of information. And then there's even more things we're doing. We're starting to use these really amazing fancy robots that we basically drop into the ocean out the back of a boat, and they kind of float and move along very slowly in the ocean. And they have a special headphone in them, so we can actually listen for the whales. You can kind of see this graph here. They make certain sounds when they communicate with each other. And when these sounds show up on one of the headphones or the microphones of these robots, we know that there's whales nearby that robot. We also are attaching kind of instruments to the outside of these whales. We call them tags quite a bit. And they basically have a GPS in them, just like you would have in your phone to use Google Maps or whatever. So when these are attached to whales, we can actually follow where the whales are going and to what locations when they're going there, what they're doing even. So we have, with all these different kind of tools I've shown you, the planes, the satellites, the drones, all these things, we can get this really amazing picture of kind of how many whales there are, where they are going, when they're going there, who is going where in this giant ocean that I've told you that is very hard to find whales in. So we're getting way better at finding these whales in this huge area. And yeah, so as you can see, we have these kind of great information about where they're going and when. And so now I'm going to kind of shift to, okay, well, why? Why are we working so hard and using all these fancy gadgets to find out where these whales are and when? And so with the North Atlantic right whale, they are critically endangered right now. There used to be about thousands, 2,000-ish in our area, and they have been decimated. They're down to only 340 individuals roughly left that we know of from these methods that we're using. And basically the reason they're at such a low number is us. Historically, they were hunted by whalers, but even since we've stopped doing that, now the big things that are hurting them is they are getting hit by boats in the water, struck by boats, and they're also getting entangled in fishing gear. So we have, to eat our seafood that we have a bunch of fishing gear in the ocean, and these create lines that basically whales can run into as they're trying to live their life and feed and move around. And so, yeah, this has basically brought them to where we are today, where there's only 340 left. And we hope that by getting a better idea of where they are kind of at all times and when they go to certain areas, we can kind of adapt ourselves around them to kind of reduce the chance that our boats or our fishing gear, these sorts of things, are going to come into conflict and hurt these whales. And so I'm just gonna so it's amazing the numbers of how many whales are being impacted by us. Roughly, or almost about 90% of all of these 340 whales have at least one scar from a fishing gear entanglement on them. And some of them even have up to 6 different entanglements. So scars from 6 different entanglements on them. But it's kind of hard to understand kind of what that means to one whale and what one whale kind of goes through in its life. So I'm going to kind of focus in on one individual just to kind of give you an idea of how these threats kind of just make it hard for one whale to live its life and do these things that a whale needs to do to eat and have calves and survive. So we have kind of this iconic individual called snow cone. And so again, with these callosities that let us know which individuals are which, we've been able to follow snow cone over her life. And so I'm going to start kind of at when she was around 17 years old. Basically, we found, so at about 17, she gave birth to a calf, her first calf, which it's very great story. But then about 6 months later, Snow Cone's calf was hit by a vessel, and unfortunately Snow Cone lost that calf. Then just less than a year later, Snow Cone actually, you can see this line here, Snow Cone became entangled in fishing gear. And so luckily we have some really amazing, well-trained rescue teams that were able to remove some of the line. She still had, had some on her, but they were able to get rid of quite a bit of it. And then so amazingly, Snow Cone just showing being such a strong individual, she ended up about 6 or so months later giving birth to a new calf, even though she had fishing gear and was entangled on her. So there's just this thing making it so hard to live your life as you're dragging this around. And she still managed to give birth to a calf, which is really amazing. But then again, about 6 months later, Snow Cone was seen without the second calf again. And we don't know what happened to the calf, but usually the calves need to be around their moms for at least a year or so, if not more, before they kind of are confident to live on their own. So that kind of makes us nervous. And then most recently, we saw Snow Cone again in September 2022, but with a new entanglement on her that was different from the first one, and was looking very skinny and not quite healthy. And so we haven't seen her since, but we're worried about her because, again, this new entanglement did not seem to be working well or going well for her. But I'm going to try and kind of shift now and end on a higher note with some kind of solutions. So again, when I talked about this idea that if we know where whales are, we can hopefully try to protect them. And I'll just kind of highlight these really quickly. A lot of this is big kind of, fancy government speech. So I'm just going to give really simply. So one thing we're doing is we have this really fancy grid system going on. And when we see a whale inside one of the grids that's in an area where whales kind of hang out, now we're basically closing the area around where this whale is or whales to fishing gear. So they have to get their fishing gear out of the area to try and give the whale space from this fishing gear to kind of live its life and do what it needs to do without kind of having the chance of encountering fishing gear. We're also working on developing this special technology that basically it, instead of having a rope kind of hanging in the column, it removes this rope from hanging in the ocean. And so maybe we can start to put out fishing gear that kind of doesn't create all this rope that whales can get entangled in areas where they spend a lot of time. And then also we're using, similarly, we have all these zones where whales are seen. And if whales are seen in these zones, we make it so that fishing boats, or sorry, not just fishing boats, all boats have to go very slow to kind of give less of a chance that they might hit a whale while they're going through these areas. So, but this information that we're getting on where they are is really helping us do this. And so if you really like kind of the images and videos and stuff, and you're really interested in right whales, I just want to plug on CBC Gem, which is a free streaming app by CBC. There's a Last of the Right Whales documentary that talks a lot about what I've talked about today, but in more depth. So you can learn more about what's going on and kind of learn more about the things you can do to help, such as kind of tell everyone about what's going on and help and the issues and how we can try and help them. These solutions I've talked about. Just trying to minimize your impact as well as a person. And if you're interested in these things too, I encourage maybe trying to become a marine biologist or a biologist. And we have many ways you can become a marine biologist as well too. If kind of all this field work seems a little overwhelming to you, there's awesome field work and lab work and even like computer coding work that people can do. There's kind of something for all types to help out. That's all. I'll end on that. Try and end on a positive note there. And thanks, everyone.
All right, Cody, thank you so much for that great presentation.
Thank you.
It's great that our fifth stop is out on the East Coast. We haven't been out there yet. So nice to visit the Maritimes on this cross Canada exploration. But it's such a important topic. And, it's something I think we're seeing playing out everywhere is we need to pay more attention, be smarter about our actions because we are having impacts on our biodiversity all over the world. And the northern right whales are definitely a story where things are close. So it's good that you're out there figuring out those solutions, looking for those ways to help protect the population that we still do have. All right, well, let's get into a little Kahoot action. If you are tuning in via YouTube, if you're in your classroom, you can get in on this action. It's kahoot.it, and then it's going to ask you for that PIN number, 738-5280. I'm going to share my screen as well, and that will bring up the Kahoot. So just bear with me. There it is. All right. So let's get in there. If you have one-to-one tech, well, you can just do it right at your seat. If not, your teacher could put it up at the front of the classroom. If you're using a tablet or something like a phone, you can scan that QR code and it's going to bring you right in. So as we're waiting for the students to join in, Cody, I want to talk a little bit about, there are kind of those two populations. There's the northern ones that we were talking about, but there's also the southern right whales, which are doing much better, say around Australia and in that southern ocean range. Why do you think they're having a they're bouncing back a little bit better, a little bit quicker?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a great question. And it's really interesting too, because you do get this great contrast. You have one that's doing really well and one doing not so well. And really what it all boils down to is kind of the northern right whales are unlucky enough to be in a really kind of densely populated area with a lot of human activities going on. And the southern right whales are fairly lucky to live most of their life, or most populations live in these much less inhabited areas. So they just don't have as much of a chance to kind of run into all these things that I was talking about that can make it hard for them to live their life. And that's kind of what it boils down to. It's almost like they've been lucky to kind of happen to make their life in these areas that don't come into conflict with us as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I still see students joining, so I'm going to give them another few seconds for class groups or students to join. Yeah. And so just kind of thinking about those two different populations, do you know if there's any kind of behavioral or something that kind of makes the southern population a little bit different from the northern?
Yeah. It's really like there's not, like, they do both do kind of these big north-south migrations. I would say not like in terms of actually encountering the fishing gear or the boats or those sorts of things. They both kind of feed on very similar food and all those things. It's really, I guess they just move to areas. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, and I can't really think of a lot that makes them just, they don't necessarily show this ability to avoid ships better than northern right whales, or they don't show an ability to avoid fishing gear better. They just, happen to live in these areas that don't kind of come into conflict as much. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Well, you were sharing that. I grabbed one of my favorite photos. A friend of mine, his name's Brian Scary. Oh, cool. He's an underwater photographer.
Yes.
Yeah. So he has spent time out with them in New Zealand. Yeah. And this is just one of my favorite pictures as a diver. Yeah. Just kind of this meeting here of this diver and this right whale. It's just love this photo.
I love that photo. Yeah.
All right. Well, students are still trickling in, but I think we should get things started because we want to make sure we have a nice long Q&A period together. If you are tuning in, now's a good time to start putting questions into the live chat. And then we've got Miss McGuire's crew hanging backstage, and we're going to bring them in for some live questions as well. But for now, let's get in on this Kahoot action. So we will count ourselves in with a 3-second countdown. Remember, 20 seconds for each question, true and false, multiple choice. The faster you get that answer in, the right answer, you're going to get more points. So here we go. A true and false to start. Whales are huge, so they're super easy to find in the ocean. Is that true or is that false? Whales are huge. We got a nice blue whale picture there. Biggest creature ever to exist on Earth. So they're super easy to find in the ocean. True or false? All right. Good job, crew. That is absolutely false. Although Cody is trying to make it easier with all of the different uses of technology, from boats to satellites to drones to tags. So I imagine it's probably going to get a little bit easier as time goes on.
We hope, yeah.
All right. Diligent Alpaca is holding down that top spot. Let's go on to our next question. It is a little multiple choice. So which method to find whales is the highest in the sky? Is that using drones? Is that flying in planes? Is that with boats? Or is that with satellites? Which method is the highest in the sky? Drones, planes, boats, or satellites? All right. Couldn't fool our crew today. Satellites is absolutely higher. I think you said around 620 kilometers.
This specific one that we're using, which is insane.
All right. Very cool. Yeah. What did that do to our board? A lot of shifting down below, but the Diligent Alpaca is holding on to that top spot. We have our next question. How do scientists identify individual right whales? Is it their fingerprints? Is it their callocytes? Is it their tails, or is it their teeth? How are they identifying those individual whales? We've got a few more seconds to get your answer locked in.
That's another beautiful southern right whale photo.
Yeah, Kahoot's got a beautiful collection of Getty images or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Great database we can tap into. All right, so it is those calicites, or callosities. Sorry, that's how they're pronounced, right? Callosities.
Yeah, I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways too.
All right, leaderboard. Oh, the legend goat has taken that top spot. All right, next question. Another multiple choice coming your way. Multi-select. Click 2 of the major threats to right whale. So you have to click 2 to get the full answer here. Is it getting entangled in fishing gear? Is it polar bears? Is it boats? Or is it getting entangled in seaweed? So you got to pick 2 answers here. Click on 2 answers. 1 or 3 or 4 ain't going to do it for you. Ooh, they were fast. We didn't even get to the end of the countdown there. All right. Good job, crew. Entangled in fishing gear, as well as boat strikes. Legend goat. Can they hold on? Here we go. Last question. About how many northern right whales are left? Was it 100, 340, 600, or 1,000 plus? So remember, they are critically endangered. So there's some you can probably eliminate pretty quickly. Is it 100, 340, 600, or 1,000 plus? Okay, good job, crew. Around 340. We're going to our podium. In third place, we've got the glowing piranha. In second place, we've got, the legend goat has fallen to second. That means first place, we've got the zany sea lion sneaking in at the end, representing those marine mammals. Very cool. All right. Well, let's get back from that screen share. Let's change gears. Let's get into some Q&A action. I'm going to take one from YouTube, then I'm going to come talk to Miss McGuire's crew. We'll take a couple from there, and then we'll take some more from YouTube as they continue to come in. So starting off with our YouTube crew, Bianca would like to know the tags that you're putting on those whales' back. Do you think that they hurt them at all?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, and something we think about a lot as scientists. And so first, not all tags are the same. And that'll kind of help answer the question a little bit too. So we have a few different tags. We have some that are meant for like very long term to try and follow them for up to a year even. And those ones kind of actually, they have like a pin that kind of inserts into the skin of the whale, or like deeper into the skin and the blubber of the whale. And those ones, it kind of depends. Usually they aren't that bad as long as they're done well. There has to be a really careful about sanitation and making sure you're putting it in the right spot in a healthy whale. But those can be considered, a little bit more invasive or worrisome. Then there's some that just go a little bit past the skin and they last maybe for months, but not up to a year. And those are also, again, a little bit more invasive, but if they're done well, a little better. But then there's these ones that are literally just suction cups, and they just stick on the outside of the whale's skin as a suction cup and let go after anywhere from a few hours to maybe 48 hours. And so with the right whales, because we're so worried about them being endangered, we only use mainly the suction cup ones that pop off after 12 to 48 hours and are only a suction cup on the outside of the skin. So they're not going into the whale at all. So we're pretty confident with that we're not really doing damage to those whales. But yeah, with other populations, we sometimes use those other ones, and it's a little bit more like potentially more concerning, but we spend a lot of time making sure we do it in a way that minimizes it, basically. Yeah.
All right. Great question, Bianca. Let's bring in Miss McGuire's crew. Looks like some 6th and 7th graders. How are we doing today, everyone? There they are. All right. So the mic is a little bit muffled today. So make sure you come nice and close to the computer so we can really hear those questions.
All right. Who would like to come first? What's your question? Is there a little side here? Anyone?
Here comes someone. Maybe. Can you kind of a little bit louder, bud? Maybe get closer.
How big can northern whales grow up to?
Okay. I think he was saying how big can they grow up to, the northern right whales?
Yeah, the northern right whales are usually roughly about 15-ish meters or so. I want to say, I'm trying to remember it's usually about 15 meters. And they're getting, it's upwards of like 40 plus tons, 40,000 kilograms. Let me double check the exact answer here. So they're gigantic. They're actually third biggest species of whale fourth biggest behind blue whales, fin whales, and sperm whales. But they're about 15-ish meters, and they are over 40 tons. Here they are. Double checking. 13 to 16 meters. So I did nail it.
All right.
Thanks for that, tough.
Good stuff. Do you guys have another one on deck, or should we come back after a few YouTube questions? All right, sounds good. We'll see you shortly. Okay, well, let's get into a few here. So this question, I think, is coming because there's been a few viral videos with whales jumping. So is that something that's common where a whale kind of lands on a boat?
Lands on a boat, I would say that actually landing on a boat is very, very, very rare. I think out of the millions of boats that transit the ocean, I've heard of it happening maybe a couple of times. I would say it's very rare, would be my guess. Just interestingly too, it's kind of fun. Certain species of whales are more acrobatic or less acrobatic than others. Humpbacks are known for doing lots of jumping like that, like the videos you see. I'm guessing probably a humpback or something was involved in that video. The right whale is funny. It's on the other end. They're like very sluggish and they don't jump that much at all. And when you see them try and jump, they just kind of barely get out of the water a little bit. So it's kind of fun. You get different whales that are, lazier whales or more acrobatic whales. It's kind of fun.
All right. Mrs. McLaughlin's fourth graders have a few questions coming into the chat here. And so first they want to know, is the northern right whale your favorite species of whale, or is there another one that sneaks in there?
That's a great question. The North Atlantic right whales are slowly starting to grow on me now that I've been working on the Atlantic coast here. I think that probably my favorite is the narwhal from my work in the Arctic. I just have really, really fond memories with them. But I don't know, they're all different in their own ways and special in their own ways. But I think the narwhal is just so cool. It feels like it's out of a storybook. And I love them. Yeah,
and that unicorn horn that they have is actually a tooth, which is pretty wild.
Great point. Great point. Yeah. And some get two. Some two teeth erupt through, and then you see a narwhal with two horns, which is pretty cool.
All right. So let's get one more from our fourth graders here. They want to know, obviously the North Atlantic right whales are a rare species, but in your field work, have you seen other rare or endangered species?
I've seen when I was on the West Coast, I saw a fair amount of killer whales, or orcas, you might know them as, and there's one population out there on the West Coast that's again, they're only about I think it's like 100 or 150 individuals right now, as well. So they're quite rare. There are other species I've seen. There's like fin whales and sei whales and things that they're rare to see near us. But as you get out into the way open ocean, there's maybe a lot more of them. So they might not be rare, but they just don't hang out in areas where we get a chance to see them as much, which are kind of cool. But yeah, orcas are pretty endangered too, depending on. Yeah.
Let's check in with our 6th and 7th graders and see if they have one more question for us.
We've actually rounded up about 5. We've got about 5 questions. We're still actually.
I think I see someone coming.
Yeah.
Nice and loud for us because the microphone's a little muffled today. Did you catch that with your headphones?
I think it was how much do the whales spend in how much time do they spend in Canada? Was that?
I want to know how much the tracking device costs to live.
Yeah, so we're losing that last little bit. If it's handy, use that little private chat and type it to us there in the private chat. Do you see that little speech bubble? Just for whatever reason, the microphone almost sounds like it's underwater. It's just we're just kind of getting it super muffled. Yeah, try that little private chat if you can and send us the question there. We're losing the last part of it.
Sounded like a good question.
Yeah. While we wait to see if that comes through. Oh, wait, I think I got it.
How much do the tracking devices cost? The tracking device can't. Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. So it again kind of depends on the type of tracking device. The suction cup ones that we're using right now, it's crazy. I was actually just looking at a budget for these. They're about $25,000 per tag, but these are very fancy ones. They have cameras on them. They have microphones on them. They have accelerometers on them, so you can actually see like at a really fine scale how they're moving. They have GPS, so they have a lot of things. Some of the other tags that are just GPS and those other kind of pin tags, they're maybe more in the $5,000-ish range or so. But yeah, the other ones are quite expensive. So we can only get a couple of them usually in our budget, and then we have to try and retrieve them all the time. So once they pop up, we try and find them.
Yeah, so that's a very important feature is that GPS, so you can retrieve those expensive tags and hopefully use them again. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna grab one more here on YouTube. So the hardest part of your job, Tristan would like to know, what's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part of our job. Yeah, that's a great question. So some would maybe say that like the field work can get very hard because you work very like long hours sometimes and it's very intense. But I personally love that. I find that I don't know, it's just very thrilling. And then when you have a mission and you're just doing everything you can. So for me, I guess I would say like the hardest part is once we get to do all the fun stuff, collecting the data. You have to take this data and you have to make something useful out of it and share it with everyone else. And so you have to write a lot and write what you found. And sitting at a desk and trying to write that can be very hard. But it's also very important because if you don't write and share that with people, nothing's going to get used of it. And then we're not going to find out how we can help these species. So if you like writing and those sorts of things, you can be a very successful scientist. Yeah.
All right. That is something we hear a lot from scientists that we connect with is fieldwork is so much fun. It can be tough with the conditions, but everyone loves it. But the other part's important too. You got to do the science. You got to share. So you got to write those reports and things like that.
Yeah.
All right. The drones, what power source are they using? How long do you have them up there?
Yeah. So they are using batteries. They're very, very fancy, expensive batteries. So they can, but because the drones use so much power and we have fancy cameras and things on them, a lot of the time we're only getting about 30 minutes of battery time out of them. And so we're very careful to make sure that we start heading back to the boat when they still have quite a bit of battery left, so we can make sure that they don't fall in the water. I've heard of malfunctions where it happens, but we try very hard to not have that happen because they're very expensive. And that's why we need different tools, because these drones are great in a small area, but with only a 30-minute battery, you can't cover much area. And that's where these planes and other things. So that's why having different tools is really useful.
All right. Well, let's start off with a shout out to all of our classrooms, those who are with us right now and those who will be tuning in later today or into next week. I want to share the link to the Edwin Teacher Travel Kit. So there it is there, a nice short little bit.ly for you. You should have this link. I think it gets sent out to you multiple times and before each of the events when we go live. But there it is if you want to take a quick screen capture there. Let's see, take that down. So, and a reminder that we have our 6th stop, which is technically our final stop, next week on April 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern. So an afternoon one. We're going to head out to the prairies and we're going to meet Tyler Wist, and he is going to talk about field heroes in Canadian farm fields. So we're going to talk a little bit about pests and the impact that they have, and how other creatures in those fields are combating some of those pests. We don't always have to turn to those pesticides. So that should be an interesting one out on the prairies. Cody, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for representing the East Coast, getting us out into the ocean, and taking us into the world of the North Atlantic right whales.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. And I just wanted to say, just kind of end off that I thought it was cool. It seemed like a lot of people here were excited about kind of the engineering and the tools and stuff too. And I just want to use that to say that the science and this biology and marine biology, it's for everyone. It's not just for people who like to go outdoors. It's for people that like these kinds of equipment and tools. It's for people that like computers. It's for people that like lab work. It doesn't matter who you are. You can find a way to contribute. And so, yeah, I just want to, leave that. It's for everyone. Yeah,
absolutely. Very cool. Well, Cody, thank you so much. It's a great message to leave off on. I see a few classrooms saying thank you and goodbye in the chat. I will see everybody on the 18th, and then on the next day, the 19th, a little bit different time, 10:30, but we'll send out tons of reminders. We are going to go on our secret field expedition to end our Cross Canada exploration. Have a great weekend, everybody. Cody, thank you so much. Great to see you. And we are going to sign off for today.
Thank you.